So what this property did when it first built the lodge about 24, 25 years ago is Michael and his family here fenced off all the little forestry bush areas. What used to happen for the previous 150 years was the farmers over winter would put their sheep and their cattle in the bush here and they'd eat out the understory every winter, and that's what they ate. So the decision they made was to fence it off, let it regrow naturally and let nature take its place again, and then grow hay or grow grass up in the paddocks, turn it to hay and bale it and then feed that to the animals over winter, which is actually better for them. So we're going to have a look at this experiment, closing off and see what we can see in the bush here. Come across this before? What do you think it is? This, we call it here in New Zealand mānuka. And mānuka is also in Australia, and over there they call it melaleuca or tea tree. And over in Australia they use it for medicinal purposes. They've got a lot of companies that make medicinal antiseptics and creams and lotions and things out of it. But here we primarily use it for honey. And you may have heard of Mānuka honey. Well, that's where it comes from. See if we can smell it, aromatic coming out of that. So we're in quite a sort of thick area of Mānuka here, and where we are, all these little tiny beech trees are growing. So these are beech trees. These are the predominant tree that's growing in the bush here. Now believe it or not, these guys grow in this alpine environment and they're completely intolerant. They hate too much wind, too much rain, too much sun, too much snow. And you think, hang on a minute, this is the area you live in. But they're very intolerant. So they require the nursery of the Mānuka to give them the support to grow. So these little tiny guys here will one day grow up to be the forest giants that you see around you. It's getting all this protection from the Mānuka, and they're slowly growing up under this protection, getting the height and what they need to get enough growth and support to survive. So that's what the Mānuka is doing. It's giving the bush a chance to grow. If you take one of these guys, step out 50 paces from the bush and plant it out there in the open, it'll die. So yeah, we'll get out and have a look. Big enough, they start to kill off the Mānuka, and the Mānuka dies. And that's what's happening to this Mānuka at the moment. It's dying off. It's trying to reach over and get that last bit of sunlight. So the beech is starting to take over. So if we have a look at the old bush line, from about 25 years ago, I'm standing here, I can look over on this angle here, and I can see all these giant beech trees with these big tall branches heading out to the sunlight, because this was the edge of the bush right here 25 years ago. So all this new Mānuka has grown in and allowed this new growth to come through, and now what was once the edge of the bush, with these line of trees here, is now in the bush. So that's the growth that has occurred, and that's why these guys look so different, because they've no competition, so they put their solar panels out to get the sun. just looked at this big hole in the ground. You're probably thinking, geez, that's not very exciting. But what it does is it allows us to have a look at the roots of a beech tree. So this rather large beech tree fell over 2 seasons ago, and it was very inconvenient because that's where my path used to be. So I had to redo the new path. Other than that, you can see the root structure. There's no big taproot. All the roots just go out sideways, and they're actually not very big at all, holding these giant trees in. So what they do is they set up a root structure that goes out to hold as much moisture as possible. In this environment, it's moraine rock for about 1,000 meters, and the water just disappears down. A tiny bit it will hold near the surface with rot material from some of the plants, but it's not a lot of water, and the rest of it just disappears. So these guys have to hold and grab as much moisture as they can. There's no point putting a taproot down because you're not going to tap into anything. The roots of all the trees mat together and create a nice mat and sort of hold each other together, but every now and then the weather wins out. Wind, rain, snow, water, weight, over it goes. So with that tree that fell over and all the other trees that fell over here, what we have breaking them down and turning them back into nutrient, in this environment it's just fungus. We don't have white ants or borer or anything similar here in this alpine environment. You need to go to a slightly warmer area, so further towards the coast. So at the moment the job is being done by fungus, and you don't know that until you see the sprouting form either in a mushroom or a toadstool. So on the side of this old dead branch here you can see these brackets that are growing in here, and that's the telltale evidence that fungus is doing its job. So when you see the sprouting form, mushrooms, etc. on the ground or on the log, that's the activity that you don't really think of. So it's breaking down all this material. If you get up close and have a look at it, it looks like a sunshine. You see the rays radiating out. It's actually quite, well, I think it's quite beautiful when you have a really good look at it. But the amount of this material that grows at different times of the year in the way of mushrooms or toadstools is amazing. Every month there's something different coming up to look at, and different colours looking at these.
All the fungi around.
It's interesting how the bush changes just in that short moment we've walked through. It's changed quite a bit, and it's going to continue to change. But I just had somebody make the comment there were quite a lot of babies here, there were a lot of small trees, and there are. If I just bend down here, just randomly, these are all beech trees. That little thing there with the 3 leaves, that's a beech tree, that's a beech tree, that's a beech tree, they're all waiting. If I did a metre square, there's probably 1,000 little seedlings here. Obviously they're not all going to survive, they can't. When these beeches drop their seeds, the seeds are heavy, they drop down, they'll sprout out, and they're waiting for disturbance. They're waiting for trees to fall, for light to come into the forest. They're waiting for that change, and when it does occur, bang, that races on. Look how thick that growth is of beech trees. They can't all survive. So what's going to happen is 1 or 2 will get an advantage, and you can see one there, it's shot up quite tall. That's probably going to be a survivor in amongst, you know, some of those. Some others will survive. But what will happen is the trees will communicate with what's called the mycelial network underground, and there'll be a trading done with this mycelial network. The trees will trade carbohydrates and sugars this mycelium network of fungus for nutrients and other minerals, and this trade will go on, and at some point somehow the trees communicate, stop feeding those little ones there and just feed the big one. The other ones die, and the big ones will eventually become trees like this. So even though there's a huge mass of young trees there, they can't and will not all survive. There's just too many of them. So some of these will never go anywhere. But that tree there, that's a good chance. That's probably the same age as Sam, about 25 years old. That's about right, isn't it? So yeah, it's about 25 years old, but that tall, thin one there, that's probably 25 as well. But the advantage for that one is they've got a lot of sunlight and it's starting to take off. So that's the difference. And it just absorbs all the rain and moisture that's coming down, and it feels very soft. If you touch it, it won't harm the plant. When we've got a few days dry, you touch it, it's coarse and crackly, like it wants to break up like potato chips. But at the moment it's soft and moist and leathery, black too.
Actually playing bees.
Oh, okay.
The only thing I could,
we'll get an answer for you back at the lodge today. How does that sound?
the only thing I could find is it's like a weapon or a throwing spear or something like that. But
Yeah, I've heard something about warrior's spear or something, so I've heard something, but I don't know if that's the meaning or what it was used for.
yeah, I guess tall, straight, fast growing, great for making spears.
Yep, and good staff, walking fast. And you can't nail it. It's so hard. So this bush here, it's really important to us. We're trying to save it as well as fence it off. We don't like sheep or cows or anything that could kill our wildlife here. And they released a huge amount of things. So we are active in this area to try and remove predators. This one here is a soft lead catch for feral felines, which we have a huge problem with. And unfortunately they'll get into this bush, and we've got a bird here called the Waipounamu. You may have seen it, it's the rifleman. It has a miserably short small tail, not much of a tail at all, and it flicks around the tree, hence the name the rifleman. But it doesn't have the ability to fly from bush to bush. It's got no real strength because of that sort of tail structure. So what he does is he stays in the bush here. So if the cat comes in, this feline, and it eats the eggs, the chicks and the bird, because it can't fly very well, then it's denuded the bush here of that particular bird. And it's going to take a very long time for the two bush areas to grow together for the bird to fly back through and repopulate this area. So it's not only that bird, it's all the birds and the bats and our neighbours we're trying to protect. So we do try and trap and remove feral animals. That looks quite slow. Slow? Still steady down here. It's just drifting in the rain. So. But if you look at that forest up there, does that look down natural like it's in the straight line? It's planted in the 50s Douglas fir. Who's got Douglas fir growing in their backyard? Because it is from America. You guys got it basically wild. It was definitely from America. Unfortunately, the forestry, because of the fire here, but erosion. We better plant some trees. We'll plant some Douglas fir. They can use it in the future as a money source. They didn't realise that nature here in New Zealand had figured out erosion and all the plants grow. They thought they knew better, and now it's a big problem. It seeds up and down the valley for about 25 kilometres in the wind, and it seeds what we call wilding pines, which are a big problem. You may have heard and seen them in your travels. We have a huge problem here with it. So we're trying to get rid of it. If you want that, there's $4 million worth of timber there, and I gift it to you. You can have it. Okay? It's going to cost you about $12 million to get it out, and you can't put roads through there because it's a national park. Who's got a good eye? Who can spot Christmas trees growing as they're walking through there? Just get a bit closer, guys. See what's happening here. This here is just a beech tree. 99% of the trees here are all beech. It's the first tree that grows in alpine environments, so very young forests that are always beech. So if you have a look at it, the leaf structure here is quite small. And if you're an animal that likes to eat vegetable matter, it's probably miserable leaf to eat. But this one here is quite thick, lush, and a lot better to eat. And if I look at that, that's growing out of this tree, that's definitely beech. That one there is beech, but this one here, that is not beech. Does anyone know what that is? This one here is mistletoe. This particular one is red mistletoe. So this is a parasite, and it looks exactly like that branch here. It's growing right next to it. But that is a parasite taking all its nutrient from the beech tree, and it's a true parasite. But it's critical that we have this in the bush here. If we don't have this mistletoe, then we don't get a bird called a bellbird that takes advantage of the nectar from the missile from the flower, and it doesn't eat the fruit. So no birds if we don't have that. If we don't have the birds, and we don't have the mistletoe, because the seed for the mistletoe is spread by the birds, so we need both. Now unfortunately that's like ice cream to a possum. They absolutely love it, and they'll come and eat the whole thing. They're not a bribing animal, they'll eat the whole thing and destroy it. So for the last 25 years we have basically tried to remove and reduce the possum population to give this plant and the birds more of a chance. And we're very lucky to have quite a good healthy population of not only red mistletoe but yellow mistletoe. Red grows on the trunk, yellow grows on the branch, and it's easy to quickly sell. But behind Sam there is what we're doing to try and eradicate possums. We have a bait tube there, a bait station. That has a blue pellet in it. It has a whole lot of natural smells in it that the birds absolutely hate, so the birds don't go anywhere near it. They absolutely hate what's in there, cinnamon, aniseed, all sorts of other things, but the possums love it, so do rats. And they'll get that, 1 pellet for a rat, 3 to 8 pellets for a possum, go home, have a sleep, not wake up. So it's great. It's a second generation poison called bellbirds. So here we notice that the ground is quite clumpy. There's all these clumps of rocks and then the moss has grown over it. And the moss is clumpy in itself in its own nature, but all this rock material here was deposited after the last Aotearoa glaciation when it all melted out. So this ice used to run at the tops of the mountains and probably higher, breaking off all this rock that was around this neighbourhood, sharp, chunky, jaggy rock. It would roll across with the ice, and then as the ice melted down, this rock was sort of smoothened by that point, and it just dropped into these clumps here. If you ever look around here, it looks like the New Zealand Army came out and tried every camouflage trick in the book. And there's a huge range, as was just mentioned before, of mosses, liverworts, lichens, and all sorts of things growing on these trees. It's just amazing. The colours from orange to light greens. Some of these are just amazing. My favourite one is this one with the hair growing out of it. And it looks like a seed head or a little sort of tuft at the end, but that's where the spores are released. So it's quite a funny, I think it's an amazing looking moss. There's about 3,000 varieties of it. As you look at these, just look at this stem on it with a seed head. Any tree's going to have one, and they're just quite amazing. And this one here, look at this. It looks like a dried up skin or something. So there's just an amazing variety of these things growing on the trees.
These little things are seed heads?
Yeah, that's a spore. That little head on's the spore. Yeah, and it's just furry, and there's different varieties just in there. There's the 2 different varieties just there. But yeah, just amazing. What do you guys have back home?
These are green and these are brown. Is that because these are newer and these are older? Or
It could be, or it could be
sun?
different varieties. Yeah, but there's about 3,000 varieties that they do for tons of years.
All but the coffee, fascinating
What else do you guys have in your bush? Isn't that strong? Yeah. So I've just picked up this leaf here off this tree, and just grab a hold of that, yeah. It's actually called the shoelace tree. Well, it's a nickname for it. It's actually a horoeka. Well, this particular one is a fierce lancewood. It's got the little spiky bits on it. Lancewoods have become a darling in the garden centres because people love these plants. If you ever watched the movie Lord of the Rings, Gandalf has a staff. The staff that he has is a horoeka or a lancewood. They marry, knock them when they're very young and small, and as they grow up and straight, they're not solid little fires as it grows up, makes a great staff. So I don't think they planted it with that movie in mind, but they come across and end up using it. But the interesting thing about this plant is that that leaf's not very appetizing, is it? If you try to rip it in half, for those that have one in their hand, it's extremely tough and strong, hence the name or nickname shoelace tree. The early settlers, if they did break a shoelace, would peel the outer skin off, use that little sort of core there as a quick shoelace mend until they could get shoelaces back in the city. But this plant grows about 3.5 meters tall, and then something miraculous happens to it. It completely changes. The leaves stop growing down, they start growing up. They get smaller, thicker, wider, and this purpley colour disappears. They look more like a leaf. The branches bifurcate on it, and it becomes a dome on the top. And the reason for that is that this has a sort of a mechanism in it to protect itself against predators. And they believe this tree was trying to protect itself from the moa, the giant bird that used to live in New Zealand. So at about 3.5 meters above browsing height, this guy completely changes into a different tree altogether. So Lancewood, it's part of the Pseudopanax family. So this old boy once again went down, and you can see why it fell over. Look at all its branches out the front, all facing one direction. Morning sun is up there, and this tree threw its branches out in one direction, massive branches. And then at some point, not enough structure to hold it, over it went. If you look on the tree, still surviving are two different brackets or plate mushrooms that you can see there, bracket mushrooms. So that's quite a large one. The Maori call that toatoa. Got a whole lot of different names, more pork bread, other things, but yeah, it's a mushroom or fungus.
Edible?
No. Well, it's really hard and woody, so I suppose if you want to chew it for a really long time, go up and knock it. It's solid. It's hard. It's not like a mushroom that it'd fall apart. But if you rub your hand on that the underside, rub it a bit and then smell it, it smells like toasted mushrooms on toast. So it is a mushroom. So it is a fungus.
Go and touch it.
This tree is referred to by the Maori as a mountain warrior, or toatoa as they refer to it as. And it's one of the other trees that are growing here. You don't see a lot of them, but there's a few. And yeah, it gets quite a good height on it. If I see a lower one, I'll show you what makes it quite different. But here we have quite a large red mistletoe. This tree is full of red mistletoe, so it's quite a popular tree for the bellbirds to alight on. In December, when this is in flower, I can be doing my talk with you guys, and the bellbirds are so interested in getting the flowers, they just fall over the tree while I'm here. They just don't care. So what happens is a lovely red flower will pop up in December, and it's like a missile, hence the name mistletoe. And the bellbird will come along, and the flower won't waste any energy. It won't open up and throw its petals out to the sunlight or any of that rubbish, trying to attract insects with a lovely colour and lovely smell or dew. It'll just stay closed. The bird will come up, it'll test it. If it's ready, it opens up and it throws pollen against the bird's beak and feathers. Now the bird's reward is that little honey, dew, sugary nectar in the middle there. Beautiful energy for that bird in summer when it's got eggs and chicks in the nest. So great energy. Flips from flower to flower, repollinating, and you're getting fresh pollen, doing the whole thing for the bush there. Then in winter, the fruit will grow from that pollinization. The birds need that energy in the winter, and they'll eat the winter fruit. This tree here unfortunately has a lot of damage down low, as you can see. Above it's quite healthy, and you can see the root structure going from these very thick roots to these thinner roots.
Yeah, he's,
This tree here is that mountain toatoa that I just mentioned, or mountain warrior. And it's quite interesting, it's got a beautiful looking leaf on it, but that's not a leaf. Scientists have decided that's a branchlet, so it's not a leaf at all. And I'm not really sure do you know what the difference is between a branchlet and a leaf? I'm not really sure either, but that's not a leaf apparently, it's a branchlet, and it's what makes the tree quite interesting apparently. I just find that odd, because to me, it looks like a leaf. Good man. I'm glad I'm not the only one. It looks like a leaf, but yeah, it's a branchlet, so go figure. But yeah, mountain warrior, a bit different. Yeah, if anyone comes to mind, sooty mold. So before we saw that horoeka, which I referred to as fierce Lancewood, and we looked at the juvenile form. Well, this is an adult. Look at this, it's bifurcated. The leaves are different. In fact, if you remember what the other leaf looked like, look at that leaf. It's completely different. The tree's different. So how did they know that that was a different tree? Well, what they did was they found the young ones like that, and then they found a juvenile just changing to an adult, which is what's happening here. So this juvenile here has the juvenile branch leaves on it, and now it's just starting to bifurcate here, and the leaves are just starting to change, but they haven't changed completely yet. They're starting to get a look closer to that, but they're starting to grow up and get shorter. So that bifurcation is just starting to happen. So that's, and the young one, teenager, turning to an adult. So yeah, quite an interesting plant. So we don't have the browsing animal, the moa, here anymore, but we do have deer. So that mechanism is still as valid today as it was when it came up with it to protect itself from the moa. The moa was the largest bird to ever roam Aotearoa. Another horoeka or fierce lancewood growing there, and this one's quite interesting because for some reason it's got a weird shape to it and it's bifurcated down low. So I would imagine that in the early days sheep or cattle probably damaged that when it was young, or branch fall or tree fall off a tree came and damaged it to give it that weird start to life, but it survived quite nicely, and now you've got 3 tall stems on it bifurcating, doing its normal job. So here we're right back where we started at the Mānuka, and we've seen a bit of mistletoe growing, we've seen how well it's growing, but if you look behind you on this side, look at the growth of the mistletoe here. It's just everywhere, and that's something we're really proud of in this bush, that it's managed to grow back and doing so well. Whereas a lot of other bush in New Zealand, it has been completely denuded because of possums. We're quite happy in the successful regrowth by managing it, that the red and yellow mistletoe has come back. But yeah, it's beautiful. Well, thanks for coming out this morning, and pretty brave of you to come in and listen to an old man rave on about things that get him excited. But yeah, thanks for coming out with me this morning.
Oh, thank you.
You seen that rainbow?
You want to see the rainbow? We now refer to this as the Valley of the Mother of Rainbows, because that's where it always appears. The Valley of the Mother of Rainbows. There's actually a second one just on the right, very right.
That's why it's the rainbow walk, eh?
That's why it's the Rainbow Walk.
The door is slamming.
Good morning. I hope you got some nice photos with the rain this morning. Excellent.